Have you ever wondered what the most profound teachings of Jesus are the ones that can truly transform your life? Often, we overlook these lessons, not realizing the power they have to help us with everyday challenges. Today, we're going to dive into 5 teachings of Jesus that can make all the difference in your journey. These are powerful, direct lessons that you simply cannot miss. And at the end, reflect, which of these lessons are you already applying in your life? Love your neighbor. When Jesus invites us to love our neighbor as ourselves, he presents one of the most profound and transformative lessons. This teaching, recorded in Matthew 22 verse 39, is not just a moral guideline. Loving your neighbor is a change in perspective that requires us to see others with the same care we have for ourselves. If each person were treated with this care and respect, relationships and even entire communities could be profoundly transformed. This love is not mere kindness, it is an active commitment to the well-being of others. Jesus illustrates this unconditional love in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Luke 10 verses 25 to 37, which shows that true love does not depend on affinities or interests. In the story, a Samaritan helps a wounded Jew, even though he is a member of a historically rival group. Jesus teaches us with this story that love is not selective and must transcend all cultural and social barriers. The love that Jesus promotes goes beyond sympathy and coexistence. It is, in fact, an action that requires sacrifice and selflessness. This unconditional love calls us to act with genuine compassion, both in small actions and significant gestures. Loving your neighbor can manifest in simple acts like listening to someone who needs to vent, or in larger commitments like dedicating time and resources to causes that benefit society. Jesus teaches us that by loving our neighbor, we practice the love that God desires to see in our lives. This love is a reflection of our faith because it brings peace where there is conflict and healing where there is pain. The practice of loving your neighbor also teaches us to listen and understand before judging, which is often not easy. We are quick to form opinions about others, but Jesus calls us to understand before making judgments. His example shows us that true love is one that welcomes, listens, and respects others. This love promotes empathy and opens the door to reconciliation, helping us see others not as strangers but as part of our shared humanity. Living the love for our neighbor is challenging, especially in a world full of divisions and judgments. However, it is this very division that makes Jesus' teaching even more essential. In a society where many feel isolated and disconnected, loving your neighbor becomes a bridge that unites and strengthens. Even small actions, like a smile or a kind word, can transform the life of someone who feels helpless. This love, which recognizes our vulnerability and humanity, makes us more humble and reminds us that we are all part of something greater. Unconditional forgiveness. Forgiveness is one of Jesus' most challenging and liberating teachings, but also one of the most necessary for inner peace. In Matthew 18 verses 21 to 22, Peter asks Jesus how many times he should forgive, and Jesus replies that forgiveness should be offered 70 times 7. This means that forgiveness should be a constant practice in our lives. Jesus knew that to live fully, we need to forgive to move forward and free ourselves from the emotional burdens we carry. Why is forgiveness so valued by Jesus? First, because it releases the individual who grants forgiveness. Holding on to grudges is like carrying emotional baggage that wears us down and causes continuous suffering. The act of forgiving frees us from these chains, allowing us to live with more lightness and peace. Jesus teaches us that when we forgive, we are not only helping those who hurt us, we are offering ourselves a chance to heal, to leave the past behind, and to rebuild our lives without the shackles of pain. Moreover, Jesus teaches that forgiving does not mean ignoring the pain or pretending nothing happened. Forgiveness is a conscious choice, an act of courage and love that allows us to face the hurt and choose not to be defined by it. Forgiving someone who has hurt us is not easy, but it is a process of personal growth. This teaching is a powerful lesson in resilience and emotional maturity because it helps us transform pain into an opportunity for learning. Jesus' unconditional forgiveness also shows us that it has a transformative social impact. Imagine a world where everyone chose to forgive and break the cycle of vengeance and retaliation. Many conflicts would be resolved more quickly, and people would learn to reconnect with one another. Forgiveness breaks down the barriers of pride and allows relationships to be restored, transforming an environment of discord into a space of reconciliation and harmony. Finally, Jesus did not just teach forgiveness, he lived it until his last moment. Even on the cross, he asked God to forgive those who crucified him. This example teaches us that forgiveness goes beyond the other person's repentance and does not depend on circumstances. It is an attitude of compassion and humility that connects us to God's love. When we forgive, we overcome pride and become more like Jesus, living more lightly and at peace with ourselves and others. Faith in difficult times. Faith is one of Jesus' greatest teachings, especially for those moments when everything seems uncertain. In Matthew 17 verse 20, he states, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." Here, Jesus shows us that faith, even if small, is a powerful force that can transform our reality and give us hope when everything seems lost. This trust is a pillar for facing life with courage. Having faith in difficult times is an anchor, a certainty that even amid chaos, there is a greater force supporting us. Jesus' faith does not deny difficulties but invites us to face them with hope. Throughout life, we all face challenges, whether financial, familial, or emotional. And it is precisely in these moments that faith offers us a new perspective, reminding us that despite the circumstances, there is a purpose in everything we face. The example of Jesus calming the storm, Mark 4 verses 35 to 41, is proof of the power of faith. While the disciples were terrified with the boat tossing in the rough waters, Jesus remained calm. He knew that everything was under control and that his faith in God was greater than the storm. When we have this confidence, we can face difficulties with a peace that surpasses understanding, knowing that, in the end, everything will be all right. But faith in difficult times also teaches us about the power of surrendering our fears to God. Often, we try to control everything around us, but this need for control only increases our anxiety. Jesus teaches us that true faith involves letting go of what we cannot resolve on our own and trusting that God is in command. This does not mean being passive but trusting and letting God guide the way when we have done all we can. Finally, faith is also strengthened in community. Jesus encouraged fellowship and mutual support, especially in difficult moments. When we are surrounded by people who share this same faith, we find support, renew our strength, and can face life's storms together. Faith, when shared, becomes a bond that unites and strengthens us, allowing us to move forward with courage even when the path is uncertain. True humility. Humility is a central value in Jesus' life, and he demonstrated it in words and actions. Contrary to what many think, the humility that Jesus taught goes beyond recognizing our limitations. It is an invitation to live with love for others, placing service above the pursuit of status or recognition. In Philippians 2 verses 7 to 8, we read that Jesus made himself nothing by taking the very nature of a servant. This teaching reveals that true humility lies in living to serve rather than seeking personal glory. Jesus showed this humility by washing the disciples' feet, a surprising act that changed the view of authority and power. By lowering himself in serving, he taught that real leadership comes from the willingness to serve others. This attitude reminds us that, to God, we are all on the same level, regardless of our possessions, talents, or status. Jesus teaches us that greatness is not in exalting oneself but in making oneself available to others with a sincere heart. The humility that Jesus teaches us also pertains to our relationship with God. It requires us to place divine will above our own ambitions, recognizing that our strength and value come from God. Jesus lived this humility by accepting the Father's will, even when it meant renouncing comfort and facing suffering. True humility is an act of trust in God, which gives us the strength to act with sincerity and righteousness. Moreover, humility is essential in our relationships. In Matthew 7 verses 3-5, Jesus speaks about the hypocrisy of noticing the speck in your brother's eye while ignoring the plank in your own. This teaching reminds us that before judging, we must look within ourselves. He invites us to reflect on our mistakes, acknowledge our limitations, and treat others with compassion and understanding. Humility makes us recognize that we are all flawed and, therefore, we should act with patience and empathy. Finally, true humility frees us from the need for approval and praise. Jesus taught us to do good without seeking recognition but for the positive impact our service can generate. This humility helps us live more lightly and authentically because it teaches us to act with our hearts focused on the common good rather than external approval. The more humble we are, the more capable we become of serving God and others with a genuine heart. Living with purpose and service. Jesus taught that a life with purpose is a life dedicated to service. He did not come to be served but to serve, and he made it clear that this is the path for those who wish to follow him. In Mark 10 verse 45, he says, "For even the Son of Man did not come to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many." This teaching invites us to live with a greater purpose, putting the needs of others first and offering what we have for the common good. For Jesus, the true purpose of life is revealed through everyday acts of service. He cared for the needy, healed the sick, and welcomed the marginalized, showing that purpose lies in the small choices to help others. Living with purpose, according to Jesus, is finding fulfillment in something that transcends the momentary and connects us to the well-being of other people. When we live with this focus, we experience a fullness that material achievements cannot offer. This teaching of living with purpose and service reminds us that our actions have the power to influence others. Jesus calls us the salt of the earth and the light of the world, Matthew 5 verses 13-16, saying that each of us can make a difference by bringing hope and support to others. By acting intentionally, we become examples of kindness and faith, showing that our lives have value by positively impacting our surroundings. Moreover, this purpose of serving is deeply linked to the love that Jesus teaches us to cultivate. He inspires us to step out of our comfort zones to offer support and help where needed. By uniting purpose with love for our neighbor, service becomes an expression of our faith, not a burden. When we help others with a willing heart, we experience the joy of knowing we are contributing to something greater. Finally, Jesus shows us that service to others is everyone's responsibility, regardless of status or position. By choosing common and humble disciples, he reminds us that the value of service does not lie in titles but in intention. The true purpose of living in service is to act sincerely and without seeking recognition, focusing on the good we generate. This teaching guides us toward an authentic and meaningful life, rooted in eternal values. These 5 teachings of Jesus: love your neighbor, unconditional forgiveness, faith in difficult times, true humility, and living with purpose and service, are not just beautiful words or ancient lessons. They carry transformative power that can directly impact your life today. Each of these principles guides us to live more lightly, connectedly, and purposefully, teaching us to value the things that truly matter. Imagine what it would be like to apply these teachings daily. Exercising love for your neighbor not only in grand gestures but in the small actions of everyday life, practicing forgiveness as a path to inner peace, maintaining faith even in the most challenging moments, trusting that there is a greater purpose in every situation, acting with humility, recognizing humanity and flaws both in ourselves and others, and living with purpose, serving the world meaningfully. These teachings, when applied, lead us to a life of true spiritual and personal growth. These lessons are invitations to transformation, but for them to take effect, we must put them into practice. How about starting with small steps? Find a way to serve someone today, or reflect on the forgiveness you need to grant, whether to others or to yourself. Strengthen your faith in difficult times by remembering that all things work together for the good of those who love God. Romans 8 verse 28. These teachings come to life when we turn them into actions. Thank you very much for staying with us until now. If you felt that these lessons touched your heart and you want to learn more about living a life inspired by the teachings of Jesus, subscribe to the channel, like the video, and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss upcoming content and will also help this message reach more people. And don't forget, leave in the comments what impacted you the most or how these teachings apply to your life. Your participation enriches our community and strengthens our journey together.